2, a possible motion to propose on actions to be taken from closed session.
Do I need to say his name? I move to appoint Adam Popish to the city council.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Adam Popish will be our Ward 1 appointed council person.
And I will do some paperwork tomorrow and you can appoint him anytime. I swear to you.
Okay, item number 23, committee of the whole, budget work session number 1, payroll assumptions. Robert, proprietary funds, rut and lost.
So I put all the documents in your packet. Couple of things I'm just gonna mention, some of the handouts at the beginning of the meeting. There was this one from Heather Carl at VPCDC. She said that the council was asking for some budget information, so this is their 23 budget, 23 actual, and their proposed 24 budget. For you to see what they are looking at. I also handed out this landfill and garbage fund status, year-to-year comparison. We can review that when we get to the landfill fund. One other thing I was gonna mention, because it was something you guys asked about at the prior meeting, when we handed out that survey from CGA about water and sewer rates, the question was, can we post that on our website? I called and talked to CGA and they requested that we not do that. They said you are welcome to share it in person with anyone you choose. They don't want it posted out there publicly because they only share it with places who participated. If there was a way to only show it to Belle Plaine people, they would have no problem with that. But obviously if you post it either on Facebook or the website, anybody can have access to it, and that's what they would prefer to do. Just because they feel like their leverage of getting people to participate is the fact that they share the information once they participate. So if it's just out there, we can't take that away from them, so. They have no problem with you showing it in person to anyone. They just don't want it posted, so. I think that was everything I owed you guys answers on. So, what we did, based on some conversation I had with Lyle, we worked on this payroll budget worksheet. We put in a 3% increase for most of the city workers, with the exception of the police officer contract is 2.5%, on the heels of, what did they get, 18? Something like that, rolling into this contract.
That was my question, was that a 2-year?
It's a 3-year contract.
Per year?
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna get 2.5 next year too? Or
I'd have to look at the
26.
contract, I'd have to look at the contract and see what was written in it. It was something they negotiated. It was 2 or 2.5, something like that.
Last year, did the city give the same amount as the police department had?
No,
Didn't remember.
no. And the other exception is the library board votes on their increases. They determine their increases and they voted 4%.
So
Based on cost of living increases.
have we ever done a study on perhaps for communities larger than Belle Plaine and 4 communities smaller than Belle Plaine. And see where we hit
You mean for wages
for
or
for wages.
Okay.
They're all over the place. They're literally all over the place.
But we have, I mean, in the past, we looked at police officers, in the past, we looked at city administrators. So yeah, we have, I can't say comprehensive like on every single person, but that has come up in the
Okay.
last.
Tell me currently then that we're not the lowest or we're not the highest?
We made a concerted attempt for the police department to be in the upper for our size town, just to try to attract officers because we kept losing everybody to all the deputy sheriffs all around. So I don't say we're the highest, but we're absolutely not the lowest. We're probably, I would guess, in the above 50%. We're in that
For
upper
the police
tier
officers.
for the police
What about
officers.
the rest of the employees?
For Public Works, I don't know. I don't think we've ever probably done anything as far as a comparison on that.
Man, I'd like to see where we stand.
Well, I do know right now, I mean, not that this is the big picture, I do know right now that, Victor starting wage on a, what was it? I don't know what they exactly called it, but Public Works, was 52,000. I don't know what size Victor,
I
Well,
read,
They're much smaller, yeah.
they're like,
Oh,
did they
yeah.
just hire somebody?
no, it's not closed yet.
Okay, because in the newspaper, I thought it said 46. But it's still,
Mhm.
up there. I don't know what we pay.
Kind of depends on what certifications you have. So if you're Public Works, that means you could be a manual laborer, or you could be running the sewer plant, which is the most sophisticated job that we have. So
And not every city public works does the same thing,
Right, it's not apples to apples.
where a police chief is probably
Mhm.
apples to apples.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's difficult for me because I don't know what everybody does.
Yeah, because I think, like, who runs the pool here? Is that?
it's a group effort.
Park and
Yeah,
Rec.
so we don't even, like, for Marengo, I think very similar community, we don't even have a park and rec department with public works.
So, I guess my curiosity is just, for all of our other workers, where are we? In communities similar sizes.
It'd be hard to compare unless the jobs are exactly the same.
Well,
They're really hard to compare unless they have exactly
Yeah.
the structure that we have. There are some communities our size don't have a
an
city
administrator.
administrator.
That's
There's some
correct.
communities smaller than us that have city administrators.
Right.
There's some communities our size that have 3 clerks. There's some community our size that operate with 1 and an administrator who does clerk
But
work.
that would all come out. That would all be revealed. It'd be like,
Yeah, but then you're still not comparing, but you can't compare an apple and an apple when you get an apple, an orange, and a banana. Yeah, like no, all that came out, but trying to find that
for example, if
community
there
or
was-
those 2 communities that have exactly our size and build, I don't know how to reach out and find them.
I could give you an example with Public Works because I'm pretty familiar with them. So depending on the size of your community and the size of your water system and how many miles it is and how many gallons you pump and what treatment, you have to have different levels of certification. So in Belle Plaine, a wastewater operator, to be a duly certified technician here, operator has to have a grade 2 water, grade 2 distribution, and grade 3 wastewater to be in direct responsible charge of all of the utilities. And there are some cities that would be, that operator might, if they have a more sophisticated water treatment facility and a less sophisticated sewer treatment facility, they might have a grade 3 water and grade 2 wastewater. So it does present some challenge. And then, you know, how many years of service do they have, and those types of things too. So the League of Cities does put out surveys for wages for different job descriptions and things like that. But like, I'll use Jay for an example. There's only one Jay, you know, that'd be a very hard role to fill. And with the experience and all the different things that he does. And so it would be hard to compare that, because there aren't a lot of people that have that breadth of knowledge out there. And I don't know if that's helping explain anything or not, but it's easier when you get into law enforcement and, you know, librarians and things like that. Public works is very difficult.
The only thing that kind of surprised me here is that Bruce only gets $600 a year.
Oh, I wondered about that too.
I mean,
And-
how many hours does he work?
Hanger, he gets
And-
hanger.
and- Yeah, and he doesn't pay for his hanger.
Are the police officers the only ones that are union?
Yes.
And they're Teamsters?
Correct.
Public Works used to be union, they voted it out. Or didn't vote it back in, however you word
They
that.
didn't, yeah, they did
Didn't
not.
vote it back in. And the rest of us are not eligible, is my understanding.
Any other questions on that?
So in the whole scheme of the budget, are we looking at payroll as being our biggest chunk?
Oh, sure. Well, it's a large chunk. I'll leave it at that. It's a large chunk.
So that kind of drives what's left for the rest of looking after.
Some of it, and I mean, we'll go through each area and you can see how it's impacted based on the assumptions that we made thus far.
So some salaries will come out of general fund and some will come out of proprietary. And that's kind of what Mayor was talking about, going through the proprietary, you know, the different things. So that'll kind of reveal itself as we go a little bit.
We do split out some of the employees. Steve in particular gets split between the general fund, water fund, sewer fund, and a little bit into the stormwater fund. I'm split between general and water. Ashley's split between water and sewer because that's primarily where her time is spent. Jay is split between roads, water and sewer, again, because that's primarily his areas of responsibility. Nick is split between water and sewer. This year, we decided to put all of Dave in road and all of John in water.
Because
Just because that's where the funds were available. We had, Dave Carl primarily does road use work. If he is working on water main breaks or sewer breaks, it's generally on overtime and we can code overtime to where it belongs. But the majority of his day in and day out activities are, road related.
Road use tax comes directly from, it's a per capita allocation that comes from the state that's based on gas tax. So we get paid X amount of dollars per capita per person in town for population. So that's one of our funding mechanisms. And that's probably one of the most monitored by the state, because you cannot go negative in road use. So the water and the sewer are proprietary. So those are things that we bill out for. And so we can have a little bit more bandwidth on those, because we're trying to rebuild our road use tax. that's kind of,
Previously, part of it was out of there.
pardon.
Part of the salary was out of there previously. That's what you switched it from.
So every year Sandy and I have to go through things depending on what our valuation of our whole town is. That determines what our general fund levy is. And there's new property tax legislation that came through that lowered the amount that we're able to levy from an 810 limit down. So that is something that's new that we're trying to navigate. So for example, the reason that I'm taken out of different areas because I administrate different areas and we try to split that out. At the same time, any wages that come out of general fund, we can also levy for their benefits. So it's advantageous for us to be able to pay wages out of the general fund levy. But because the general fund keeps getting cut by the state legislature, the amount that we get, it varies so much. We can't pay police out of water, so police has to come out of general fund. So we have to really be careful of how we're utilizing those types of mechanisms.
To answer your question about some stuff that we changed versus last year,
Yeah.
some of Steve was coming out of road use tax last
So
year.
you're really kind of checking that because you know you can't go negative.
Right.
And we want to build that
And
fund.
And also, given the fact that our population took a dive, we lost 200 and some bodies, 200 and some souls, at the most recent,
I think they just weren't counted.
census.
I think so. too.
Either way, that's the official
Right.
number that got
That's
turned
what you
in.
gotta go by.
So,
Right.
we took, I don't know what it was, $106 or something like that, a head cut.
Okay.
So,
Good explanations. I'm just
processing. Next year, maybe we can shove more back in, it's always kind of like moving blocks. Where can we handle blocks this year? Like last year, we had a huge stormwater balance, so we threw some labor at it. Well, we've used that up this year, so I can't throw labor at it because it won't handle it this coming year. April, when it was Lance, he did a lot of helping on the snow side. So a piece of his labor was coming out of there. That may be determined in the future for April, but it wasn't necessary because she came in at a lower rate than Lance was making when he went out. So we have a little bit of time to figure that out as we go. So that's kind of labor in a nutshell.
Alrighty.
I got a question, maybe
Yeah.
off the board or just a little bit further down the road. The vacant public works, are we looking to not fulfill that position this fiscal year?
So we will talk about that when we get to road use tax.
Okay.
To answer your question, we're not 100% sure.
Okay.
So we are leaving some balance in it. Jay wants to try it without.
Mhm.
And if everything works okay, that may be what we do going forward. If we get down the road and we find, wow, this was really not working how we had planned, and we really need to backfill that position again, there's some funds there.
Okay.
If we get a year down the road, it's working really well, then we'll use up those funds and fix a few more roads.
So one of the strategies where we were a little bit upside down before is we had more unskilled labor and we were outsourcing our skilled labor projects. So hiring out a lot of things that were very expensive.
Mhm.
Whereas now we're doing the opposite.
Okay.
So if we have a thing, a task or an ongoing task that we need to have done, like hauling snow, that is not a high dollar item like it would be if we hired a excavator to come in. So it's reversed, and I think that is responsible. So, if we have a big snowstorm, we'll just call in people as we need them, and that makes
I
sense.
get it. I was just looking at this because it says
Well-
0% across the board, so I was just,
Yeah, and
Just
the reason I
asking
left
as
it
well.
in there is, it's a big spreadsheet. It has a lot of numbers that all are dependent on other ones, and I really hated to take it out and redo the entire spreadsheet just to find out that we wanna add them next year.
Yeah, the
So
spreadsheet is
It was a whole lot
amazing.
easier to say, yeah, none of you and none of you and none of you. So,
perfect.
That works good anyway.
Perfect.
so if we can start with the airport fund. I did a couple things a little bit differently this year. You still see the fiscal, last completed fiscal year actual, both revenues and expenses, current year's budget, revenues and expenses, and our proposed budget for the year we're working on, revenues and expenses. And then it will show you.
Is
just
everybody
like
on
last
the, it
year.
looks like this, it's towards the rear.
Keep going.
We're getting there.
Okay,
Keep going, get past all the black. Keep
Going.
going,
All
keep going.
right, all right.
It's the first yellow.
I found it.
all right. Sorry.
Thank you.
Hang on.
In my notepad. Perfect.
Anyway, and whether the airport fund would be running at a surplus or a deficit for fiscal year 25. They would be running at a slight deficit. The thing I added this year is that next section. So I'm trying to project fund balance. So as of the end of November, which was the last numbers I had when I did this report, they had a fund balance of a little over 51,000. My best guess at their budgeted income that has not been realized yet this year, that we are expecting to take in, the expected expenses that they budgeted to spend yet this year, that would leave them at a fund balance of about 49,000 at the end of the fiscal year we're in. And then if you take in the projected deficit for fiscal 25, that's where their fund balance would be. And then I have just a little spiel down there. Obviously, Bruce wants to have a work session with you guys sometime in April. As of this point, he is not expecting any federally funded projects to occur, which is why I don't have any big dollar items in there. That's the difference that you see with fiscal 23. You're talking 400,000 and 500,000 in there. That was because we had a project.
Maybe this should be obvious to me, but they're not. Are we on GAAP accounting? Are we responsible?
Cash counting.
So we're not responsible to pay the bills at the end of the year that we owe somebody, even though they are not yet paid, and vice versa. You do journal entries to move it's just strictly cash.
Cash.
So if we get to the end of the year and we owe somebody $5,000 and for something that
pay them in
happened in
July.
this year, you would pay them in July, but you don't have to do a journal entry to make it appear that it was in this fiscal year.
Well, most of the time we try and pay people.
Yeah, but you can't,
as soon as we
yeah,
bill.
right. Well, an example would be, I mean, right off the bat would be payroll. You're always, or your light bill or anything, but no, you answered my question.
We pay it, it's accounted for when the cash goes out.
That is exactly what I wanted to know.
I also, did a sense check. I do have December numbers now. So I did a sense check to that middle section and we're kind of right on target with that still. About $1 off, so.
What is their income? Is that like hangar rentals?
Hangar rental. We also have CNL Holsworth rents the large hangar on like an annual basis. And then we have a couple of crop dusters,
Ramp
pay
rental.
ramp rental.
What
Just
about his concern for the runway and being prepared in a 10-year period of time.
It's a conversation you're gonna have in April with him.
But will the budget be set? I mean, when do
So
we start considering that request?
if something would have to be done, as of right now, there is nothing occurring according to Gapster in fiscal 25.
Cause that was actually that 500,000 and that was all just done.
Yeah, we just did that. So if that situation would change, then you're gonna experience this later this month or possibly in early February. We will do a budget amendment,
Okay.
okay? So if we find out that, oh, we are gonna do a project, we're gonna have to push it up to 25 because it's necessary now as opposed to we thought we could wait till 26. We'll do a budget amendment, we'll budget for money in, budget for money out.
But I felt his urgency or his concern that it's such a big project that you can't wait to make a budget amendment in 1 year. That won't work. You won't have the money.
Well, you can't do something you don't have the money for unless you bond for it, which.
So what you're telling me, because I don't know, is that there's no way to prepare for that within our budget. Prepare.
It would probably, not to jump in,
Please do.
the runway restoration would probably be over $6 to $8 million.
Mhm.
And that would, we get a certain amount of money from the FAA every year for meeting certain criteria, and we can bank a certain amount,
That's okay.
and it's several
We don't
hundred
get
thousand.
cash.
No, we just,
The FAA banks it, so it's kind of like they give you this little virtual credit out there. And then every year they kind of add that number.
Okay.
Okay, now you can have a little more because you didn't do anything for a year. Oh, now you have a little more. You haven't done anything for 2 years.
Mhm.
So at some point, we would get to the point that we would have a significant amount of money. Like we just did that with the 400 and some thousand that we just completed in the last fiscal year.
so it's like you can accrue so much and you can't go over that. So you couldn't just sit there and try to save with those appropriations to get to $1 million, for example. Once you get to 450,000 or something like that, then you have to use it, or it just stalls
Use it
out.
or lose it, yeah.
And it's based on the size of our operation and other things. So that's why we have a consulting engineer that tries to work with us on, are we going to do some ramp repairs? Are we going to try to build a hangar? Are we going to do this, that, or the other thing to try to stay in line with that so that we're spending that money, but not having to, and oftentimes for certain projects, there are other community funds like the Mansfield Foundation that would potentially match that. The Tippy family has matched some aviation projects previously. So, but for the comprehensive runway project, that's a conversation that Bruce will be best to explain, but that's a thing where we may have to restructure the way it works in the county to be able to accommodate that, because our debt limit wouldn't even allow us to borrow that much money.
Okay.
If we would want to use that kind of tax dollars to pay for that kind of a thing, we wouldn't even be able to.
Understand.
So does anybody have any other concerns about airport? Okay. Keep in mind, although we're going through these funds now, how I envision this working is we'll go through these funds tonight, we'll go through some other funds 2 weeks from now, and then that third meeting, if things need to, but we need to adjust something we already went over, nothing's set in stone yet.
Right.
Just our best shot at it for now. If it looks okay or something really looks wonky and we need to look at it closer. Next fund is compost yard waste. we take in funds from our utility bill and expenses go towards the maintenance of the compost pile and grinding of that. Typically, this fund is self-sustaining as long as we don't hit it too hard with expenses. Again, it had gotten quite large. We spent some of it on a capital project, but then we also utilized some labor this current year. Because it was one of the funds that the auditor kept saying, what are you doing with all this money? Do something. So it's getting low, so that's why we're not taking any labor out for fiscal 25. But as you can see, if we're just budgeting the necessary charges to manage the compost pile and the expenses associated with that, we're just at a slight surplus for the year.
And we know that there's no chance of an increase for the grinding fee that might come through. in
Not
this
that
time.
they've proposed.
Okay. And they usually do that far enough ahead of time so we can budget? Yes, no? You don't know?
I'd like to tell you, I personally contacted every single vendor to see if they're gonna do an increase, but I didn't.
The biggest thing, I think that's the variable is sometimes in their contract, they have a fuel surcharge that if fuel goes up so many percent or
Correct.
whatever, then
Which right
that-
now, we're not experiencing.
we're not experiencing that. So we don't have reason to believe that they're going to gouge us.
Is our contract yearly? Is it yearly or multiple years?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
What an awesome thing, by the way.
The compost pile?
It is a hugely great benefit to the community.
Landfill garbage. So this is a tough one. Obviously, we went way too many years at not managing this fund well. It's finally working its way out, but my best guess is we are still not going to be out of the hole this year nor next year. We're going to be darn close.
Go Sandy.
But there just isn't much else to take out of it. I'm already, before I go on, let me just say, Serious Sanitation, they're the bomb. I am so happy you guys made that selection.
I've not heard one complaint.
They are awesome to work with. They are
Fantastic.
super duper guys.
And they are Santa Claus.
Santa
Yeah.
and elves.
Very elegant.
Just they've been really, really great to work with. On top of the fact that Mayor Fish always kind of suspected that there was something a little wonky going on with tipping fees with the predecessor. And, I couldn't prove it. We couldn't prove it. But our tipping fees have gone down significantly with Serious Sanitation.
That was
They're hauling for all the same people.
involving business accounts being thrown in with our
Yeah.
citizen
So
accounts.
I think
Yeah, you gotta explain tipping fees, sorry.
so. Anytime something gets hauled to the landfill, you have to pay a gate fee.
Uh-huh.
It's also called a tipping fee.
Okay,
So we pay the garbage company to pick stuff up. When they dump it, we pay that fee for it to get dumped.
Mhm.
And it's not the way everybody does it. Some people just pay the garbage company and they either make or lose on the tipping fees, and that's their best guess. We've never done it that way. Since I've been here anyway, we've not done it that way. We've always picked up those tipping fees. One, we get a pretty good rate.
Do we need a water? Water?
Um,
Anybody else need a water?
yeah, I really like these guys, and it's helping this situation. Also, the price that they gave us this year, next year, and the following year is flat, no increases,
Which is amazing.
which is
It is.
amazing.
Yeah.
And I asked them, every other month or so, how are things going? You happy with how things are going? I mean, I want to make
Really?
sure that it's working for them too.
Right.
and that's the kind of thing the
you seem
community
to think
needs
it
to
is.
know.
Mhm.
Because guess what, folks?
Well, it's just social
No.
media isn't shy,
We're
especially
locked.
when we first were Republic. They missed us again. And
Yeah,
I haven't heard that once with
no,
these,
but I mean,
these
you know
guys.
that they're locked in.
Yeah. But we get a call every once in a while, and I'm gonna say 99 times out of 100, it's, I got my garbage out late. Can they swing back and get me?
They are fast.
They're early.
And
They
early.
are, they're really early. When they say it's gotta be out by 6 o'clock, they really mean that
Yeah.
because they're starting at 6:02.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and they're always, as long as they're here, they have no problem. Sure, yeah, I'll swing back, I'll grab them, you know. And if there's some things to be concerned, they've only had one serious concern so far, and that somebody puts dead animals in their garbage. And the last one was a skunk.
Oh.
It's just
Oh my
it's July.
And it was probably, I'm guessing it was maybe in a bag because he said he didn't smell it when he tipped. But when it compacted,
Oh.
it probably busted.
Oh,
And
Gum
he drove
juice.
the rest of town and he reeked, you know. So, you know, that's,
That'd wreck your day.
you like to hope
Oh my
somebody would do that, like, in a malicious way, but that's been literally the only serious complaint they've had is, you know, it just really makes the truck stink. But anyway, back to landfill garbage. So the only thing I would kind of like to do, and honestly, I'd like to do it this year, but I was asked not to last year. I would really like to do some type of interfund loan and pull this out of the negative. It will pay another fund back, but it will take one thing off of our audit.
I was gonna say, you just wanna do that for the audit.
Absolutely. I
What-
don't-
what
I don't like getting spanked.
What
Same
fund are
thing,
we
you'll be
really healthy
fine.
in that where we could do that? Is water healthy enough to where we can do that?
But it will be obvious to the auditor that that's what's happening. You'll get there. Keep
Sure.
going.
I know, but I hate getting spanked.
Compost.
You'll be fine.
Will not do it? Compost would be closed. No, they wouldn't do it. Just leave it in the hole.
Yeah, I can't use compost.
No,
No,
still leave it.
you're gonna get there all on your own. And then you say, yay.
We'll still get there. Well, anyway, you can think about it.
All right.
Like I said, otherwise, it'll be close. It'll be close. Sewer fund. Obviously, you're all aware that one took a big hit, when the lawsuit didn't tip our way. It is still paying back, another fund, and it will be doing that for the next 5 years, including this one. They're doing okay. However, it was brought, I know I haven't shown you guys the audit yet, but I got a preliminary look at it just this week. One of the things called out was the sewer fund. Apparently there's a bond requirement, not that it's ever been mentioned before, but all of a sudden this year they decided to mention it, that we're supposed to be keeping an operating income of 110% of our revenue bond. This past year, we were not there. Based on the projections I have, we will be okay. It's gonna be tight, but we'll actually meet that, revenue bond requirement.
That's our yearly principal and interest payment, correct?
Given these numbers. One of the things you'll notice is, we're running sewer at a deficit. The sewer fund, not the sewer fund, the sewer plant has some things that are becoming, very necessary to replace, and they're gonna start getting really expensive, especially if they wind up not working. So we're actually budgeting $47,000 in capital, but only going $31,000 negative for the year. So, you know, could that be a little better than that? Maybe their numbers are inflated, you know, we're not sure, but they need a new boiler, they need a new air compressor, and they need a water softener for that boiler. right?
The boiler is a central boiler that heats the entire facility, the whole campus. So it has to be replaced. And the water conditioning equipment has to protect that boiler. So those things we have to do, and it's to the point where if we don't do it, it's going to not be preventative maintenance. It's going to be very expensive. So it's just good timing. It's good to get it done. And
And Jay said he
It's
could
good.
probably fix the air compressor, but it's gonna get to the point that you're putting more money in it than. it's
the
worth.
air compressor is a compressor that runs pumps. So they're pneumatic pumps. So it's not something that we want to fool around with because we have to have that to run the sewer plant. They're, direct operational things that we have to invest in. And so even though the $31,000 deficit, we're just pulling out of the fund balance for that to do these things because I don't think we should wait anymore on that. And like Sandy said, we're gonna shake out okay with our 110%. It's gonna be close.
Yeah, we still have like, $40,000-$50,000 cushion in there where we need to be versus where I'm estimating we should shake out at, so.
And when will this lawsuit expire?
Well, it's over.
Oh, lawsuit's over.
The-
We just
Okay,
lost.
5 more years. Okay.
yes,
You said 5 years, right?
We borrowed money from ourselves, okay, from one fund to another. We
Yeah.
borrowed money, loaned money to ourselves for 5 years.
okay. And we're in what year?
One.
Next year will be 2, right?
There's only one.
Over a glass,
Only one.
over a glass of wine will explain the whole thing to you.
Yeah, somebody, I want to, I'd really like to know this story.
It was like, what, February last year?
Yeah,
Yeah, so, our second
Sounds
payment,
like a very
our
sad
second-
story.
our second payment to ourselves will be in February. Stormwater fund, it had become excessive. We hit it really hard this year. We bought some needed equipment. We, took some public works labor out of there. And by the end of this fiscal year, we would no longer consider it excessive. So that should make auditors happy and we've utilized the money in a good way. And if we just allow it to fund itself, it will cover the storm intake needs that we have from year to year. Jay would like to replace 2 or maybe 3 a year storm intakes. He said much more than that is getting kind of aggressive for him to actually get them done because you're going to a really good weather. So,
And if we hire them out, we'll get one for the same price.
right.
Yeah.
stormwater. And the water fund actually has recovered really well. I think since I've been here, not that I was always in this role, but I don't think we had a positive water fund until this last year was finally the first time we popped positive. I was so excited and then garbage took a crap. But other than that, so it's doing really well. We can't really count meter deposits as operating income because we always have to have that available to give back to people who move out. So I kind of took that out of the mix just as if it's not there. And otherwise, I think it's holding its own right now. Obviously, we're going to expect to start expending some funds in the future as soon as we can get the project engineered and through the DNR and up and running. So I know Nick always had 200,000 in his mind that he wanted to be carrying $200,000 in there. Well, he finally got there, so we're doing well.
congrats on that, because it's not easy tax to play catch up.
It was bad. It was bad. Those are all our proprietaries. They were relatively painless, I felt this year. Road use tax fund, or RUT. We're running just at a slight deficit for the year, but we have projected fund balance. And although I tried to talk Jay into using it, all he remembers is that negative he walked into. And he's done such a good job at managing it and pulling it out. I told him we'd wait a year then and see how labor shook out. And that's why, your question, Garrett, was good, but that's the 40,000 that we're kind of sitting on there. Worst case scenario, we do a budget amendment, pull someone in, we're ready to go. Funds are available. If we find out it's not needed, then, 26, we'll.
Yeah, I talked to him last night. He really wanted to be here tonight for his portion of the budget, but he knew that we were going to closed session, so. But he was really excited to talk about it.
It's remarkable.
He has done so many good things. It actually just sold 2 more pieces of ancient equipment. They're actually not even out the door yet, but those just closed, I don't know, yesterday. Yeah.
55 and 25, I think.
So you got 55 out of the Dodge,
That's a good price for
and
that.
then 25 out of the old dump truck.
Yep.
That's nothing, that's
Awesome. Amazing.
awesome.
So, really good. So he's been, in addition to the road use tax fund, which you won't see those funds go into here, anytime he's been doing that, he's been sticking it in public works equipment accrual. So he's building that up for the day that they want to buy,
Truck.
new truck, dump truck, sweeper, whatever they decide they need next. He's got one more really old truck that I think he's got his eyeballs on. Right now they're using it though, but it's a 81,
Yeah, it's
or is the one that we sold an 81?
The one we just sold was an 80.
81. Okay, so
Yes.
the one we still have then is a 79.
70 something, yeah.
79. Because one was a 79, one was an 81,
Yeah,
and
the one we
one
just
of them
sold
that
was
he
the
got rid of,
81.
and one of them.
I drove them
not.
both plenty and they're hateful. They're exhaust leaking.
Oh, yes.
They both are by quite a bit. I didn't want to say anything.
So that's road use tax. The last thing I kind of wanted to get through tonight was loss or local option sales tax. I literally just took a stab at stuff. I got a little bit of feedback from Judy. I didn't actually enact any of those changes. The biggest one that you mentioned, Judy had talked about possibly flipping money between housing grants and housing fund, putting more in the grants and a little less, for like demos and that kind of thing. It's all the same fund. I mean, that money all goes into the same bucket of money.
Okay.
So we can do that or not do that. It's not going to change where I'm dropping
Okay.
money at.
Okay. I had a question on the ambulance.
Yep.
That tax that was passed, is that effective in fiscal year 25? It is, okay. So that money starts coming in after July 1.
That's
We
my
don't know when,
understanding.
We don't know when, okay.
And I have not talked to anybody who knows what that means for us yet.
Yeah,
They don't, because they're still trying to figure out the, per se, funding or how they're gonna divvy out
how the
the
allocation, right?
district, your district of,
Okay.
you know, Belle Plaine Area Ambulance has everything signed, the E99 or what is it, E9, I think it's E99 or E90 or something like that, they've signed it. What is their actual district?
2080.
Is that what it is? I thought, something like that, whatever it is, yeah, but
Yeah,
the districting of.
Okay.
And then each township pays a different millage amount,
Yeah,
and those are negotiated at the township level, and some of those haven't been touched in 30 years, so there's a lot of
There's a
legwork.
lot gonna happen.
Yeah,
Okay.
Which is why I didn't touch it, because I thought,
We don't know.
you know,
Mhm.
oh, well, so if it overlaps for 1 year, I'm sure the ambulance can put it to good use. But then at least maybe we'd know,
Mhm.
you know, what to do another year, then we might know, you know, gee, if they all of a sudden have boats of money, well, that's great, then we'll do something else.
we get a really good return on our investment for $7,000.
Mhm.
Charmaine, for you, the top part of the loss project up there, where it says debt service 20%, when loss was voted in, because it's something that the public had to vote to approve to
Right.
get that extra penny.
Yep.
When loss was voted in, the way it was voted in was 20% of anything collected had to go to debt service, offsetting debt service. 25% had to be split between the community center, fire department, library, and park and rec.
okay,
So we cannot adjust those numbers. It will be whatever we take in, that's how much they get by percentage. I took a stab at projected revenue. Last year, we went super conservative on that revenue number because we were expecting, when we voted in the franchise fee, that loss would take this huge hit. It didn't really happen. At least not to the degree that we estimated. I'm still a little cautious because I hate going like, you know, they were talking about, oh yeah, loss should have like an 11% bump this year. And I'm like, wow, that's a bunch. When we went to the budget meeting, they were like, do not budget 11%. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's what the state's predicting. Their advice was go middle of the road, because if you get more, great.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you plan on spending something you don't have, ouch. So I went 6% off of, we had like 3 things that we could do. We could go 6% off of last year's budget number, which we know was low. We can go 6% off of what we've actually been getting, which is kind of middle of the road number, or we could go 6% off of what last year's projection should have been, which we carved down. I went with the middle of the 3, hoping that it's somewhere in between there, and then did the 6% on that number. So that's where I came up with the 226.6. Loss, they used to give us a number in the past, you know, X per capita. They don't do that anymore. Now you get what you get. So whatever people are spending here, Benton County, that's what we get, our share of that. I left the fireworks in there. We have not cut that check yet this year. I'm waiting for CDC to have their conversation with Lions to find out. I don't even know where to send it. You know, CDC managing that. Is Lions going to continue to manage that piece? Is the city going to wind up paying that piece? So I'm just sitting on that $2,000 for now. I think we all like having fireworks, so I left it in there. I just don't know where to go with it yet. Steve and I talked about City Hall. We put a little bit bigger number in there. If you've ever been in City Hall when it's really cold outside, I swear you can feel the wind blow in here. So the other thing that I notice is, other than the sewer plant and the well field, I'll take those out of the mix because obviously they're big energy users. But in terms of every place else that the city owns, we are the biggest energy user. So there's got to be something that we need to look at.
It's a giant brick building with no insulation. in it.
Right, I was just gonna say, the construction of this thing is
we were-
not helpful.
We were gonna see technically, we don't qualify, based on square footage for Alliant to do an energy audit, but Steve had some connections and thought he might be able to talk him into doing it anyway. I think he had to have like 8,000 square feet or some ridiculous number like that.
Unbelievable.
You almost need to put insulation of then paneling in your office where you're located, because I'm sure that's freezing.
You know, really what I think the problem is over
The ceiling is,
If you pop up one of those tiles, there's nothing but dead air between here and the roof.
it's
And no-
constructed the
and
same
no
way
insulation under.
the bathhouse is it's just concrete.
Right.
And then membrane roof,
Yeah.
no insulation. There is some, it's not vermiculite, but there's some pour in insulation in the wall. Like if you knocked apart a bait container, the white, I mean, it's not like a R1.
Right.
So, but the other thing is the duct,
1960s stuff.
the ductwork system, the way the heating and cooling in this building works is very complicated, and it could be done a lot more sophisticated, so we weren't using so much energy. The school of thought on how they do things now is just different from the way that it's done here. You know, we wouldn't have just one furnace for this room. It would just chug away, you know, be very inefficient.
And we did find, you know, we used to like either turn the furnace off or turn it way, way down in here when we didn't have council meetings. April was gonna need to build an igloo in there, because
You have to heat the whole thing.
they're on the same, I had no idea. I thought she was on with us, and she's on with an empty room, so.
The other thing is like,
Energy to catch back up though too, if you do that.
yeah, because the walls get cold, the floor get cold.
Yeah.
But this used to be the fire station, and the ceilings are very tall in there. And there was massive air reclamation units. So when they would run things, giant air louvers open up to let fresh air in. So if you're running a truck in there, like a fire truck,
Oh, sure.
you would have makeup air coming in, and those things can just be eliminated. In, you know, there's just giant holes in this, you know, we just have
Anyway.
it kind of buttoned up, and we just want to address it and get it, you know, energy efficient.
So that's why we're budgeting a little money there in hopes if we spend money, we can save money. I'll have CDC unchanged.
So if they're not gonna have a director,
They may or may not, right? You
We
said they're-
are
planning
looking
for a
to
part-time?
hire a part-time director for $20,000 a year. Previously, the salary was $32,000 a year. So I think that this report that Heather provided really gives a big picture, the true picture of how everything is. It includes our investments or memberships that have come in, expenses for the various events, which are pretty much a loss. I mean, you lose money doing it. So it's all there.
Can I ask you a question about it? Do you know much about this report?
Well, ask me a question and if I can answer it.
Okay.
Otherwise, we can contact Heather.
No, that's fine. So
Can I
operating
get that word? Wait a minute.
operating expenses,
Uh,
page 2, or the first page after her email.
okay.
Um,
Oh, okay.
operating expenses, you go
right.
down to downtown/community improvement, and this year is $7,000 versus $500, $34, $465, now $7,000.
Right, I believe that is including, we're hoping to do a larger project this year. But I cannot be more specific on that because Heather would be the one who could tell you for sure.
Okay,
I'll ask.
yeah,
Okay.
if you would, that's
Yeah.
It jumped
significant.
up a-
Yeah, it is
Jump
significant.
out.
Me too. And you would be surprised finding someone to do that position at that price.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I ran the volunteer program for a little of nothing,
Yeah,
and it was an awesome program.
Yeah.
There are people in the community
mm-hmm.
that will come forward
Also,
if the word gets out.
oh yeah, it will be, we're working on job description and benefits and all that, so.
I think some of these not to speak out of turn, community improvement and downtown stuff, we're informed by that report that Kate read earlier about things that we need to do downtown.
Mhm.
And I think it's in alignment with some of that stuff. So Sandy and I didn't tinker with that amount because we wanted you guys to make the decision on that.
This one's just always confused me because, and I maybe still don't understand, is we give them, or we 17,750 since I've been on the council. And then they'll come to us and say, we want to buy Christmas trees. Will the city give us $500? So I guess I don't understand why we do $17,750 and then they come to us 3 months later and say, well, we need $500 to do this. When isn't that what
In
the
the past, have we
17,000?
granted it?
We have never denied it.
Yeah, that could be a problem.
So I guess I just trying to understand why we give 17,750 and then
Right. And this is no way justifying it, but it's kind of like when they do stuff for Main Street, they're like, is this the city's Main Street? So if we want to beautify it with lights or trees or whatever, is this the city's Main Street, or is it community development's responsibility to pay for these things? And I think that's how they usually approach the council.
but that's what we would give you $17,000.
I'm just saying that's how they approach
Yeah,
the council.
no, I understand. I've never understood it. I'm just trying to understand it.
The 17,750 was a commitment that the city made back when we were in Main Street, Iowa, to help fund the full-time director.
Right. That was the point I was getting to, was that since they aren't gonna have that full time, I mean, I'm all for supporting community development, but it's like therefore the 3rd and 4th of July, the city ends up paying for security. When, it's their whole event, they're the ones that are planning it. They should have budgeted that. They came to us, I remember, a year in a panic because they hadn't budgeted for it. And of course the city then, I don't want to use the word caved, but I will, that we caved and then we paid the security for the dance that night when they had always taken care of that in the past.
Well, we might just,
And then now all of a sudden we just now every year they just assume that we're going to
I
pay
think
for
that-
when that should be budgeted within their whole program.
The
because we're
first
giving them
year,
money.
we didn't have enough police officers to cover, and I think that was a call that Mayor Fish made because we only had like 3 full-time officers at that time, and we didn't have anybody to cover the event.
But I guess my feeling to them is that's part of their responsibility, is budgeting for the whole thing that they're planning. They have to pay for the band. They have to pay for everything else. I mean, that's part of the budgeting process
Well,
in my mind on that.
responsibility, would it be the mayor's responsibility to make sure that they understand that they have to work within their budget? Be reminded that they have to work within.
Well,
their
I think
budget
it's just
because-
us stating that, if we're gonna give them $17,500, that's fine. But then everything else, they need to fit within their budget. Because,
Right.
go ahead.
Community development will be coming to the second council meeting in January, and all of these questions and
Yeah,
comments could be directly.
That's good.
I think one of the things with the budgeting is since I've witnessed, I don't know if any event they've ever put on is cash flowed. It's mostly like they do that for like a community, what do you want to say? Like, yeah, it's like a quality of life thing. And I don't think and I don't know if it is possible to turn a profit. I mean, it's like if you get a $20,000 band, and you charge admission and you can make $10,000, but it's hard when you're trying to hire $1,000 band. And
I understand that. So I guess where I'm going, and this is not directed at Councilperson Schlesselman, is we as a council, or for her and her role in community development, we as a council though, that 17,750 was for when they had a full-time director. They don't have one, they're working on a part-time director. Is it better for us as a city to say, we will support you, we are going to manage the 17,750. You come to us when you think that the city should supply you with that money.
Or we
how-
supply them with the money and says, here's your money, figure out your budget. You're not coming to us for any more money. So that's what you're getting for the year from the city. Don't come to us for security. Don't come to us for anything else. Plan your year out. And if that doesn't work, then you can welcome to come to the city and petition to say it's not enough money. But, you know, I just feel like at the last minute, we're then being held hostage to where we're the bad guys by not supplying the money for something that,
Well,
to be
that's-
honest with you, should have been planned ahead. And I realize there's been a lot of ebb and flow within the group, but I really think that we need to act within a budget.
Well, and that's why I said if we control it, then
Well, but they've got a board, they've got a committee. I think that they ought to be able to control their own funding, and we can say how much that we're gonna give them a year. And then it's up to them to decide where they have to spend that money. And then not come to us at the last minute saying, oh gee, we don't have enough money for the security. Can you guys spend $400 or whatever it is? I don't want to have this read in that I'm against supporting the community development. That's not it. They just need to work just like what Sandy's doing. We've got to work within the budgets we have and don't come and nickel and dime us, because we've got big, huge things coming down our pike. And I think we're going to have to tighten our budget here.
Well, I mean, I'm sitting here saying I don't want to pay for somebody's accidental sewer problem. So I don't really want them coming and asking for extra money either. It's,
I think we just have to be a little bit more prudent in how we're spending.
correct me. I think, like you said, it's not that we don't support them, it's because we do support them and we want them around to do the things, but I'm just trying to figure out where that money goes. And then they come and for Christmas, they wanted to buy Christmas trees. Well, they're the cities, so the city has to buy them. But we did already,
Okay,
so
we'll talk.
It'll be
talk to them next time.
We'll talk
big
to them.
conversation.
Last thing, on that lost, when you get down into the police car accrual, fire equipment accrual, and public works equipment accrual, we increased the fire equipment accrual. They are, trying to plan for a new fire truck.
Frontline pumper.
They're probably 400,000.
Yeah, when I started here, there was about $4,000 or $5,000 going into equipment accrual, and we've been really, Sandy and I've been just trying to figure out how to bump that up every year. If it's 3,000, 5,000, whatever. So we bumped it from 15 to 18 just to start trying to get us there, because the last couple fire trucks we had to get were through,
Yeah, okay.
And I think they
Yeah.
sit from 15. Sorry about
15.
that.
Let's see that.
they were purchased through geo bonds. So, but if we can show the community we've been saving and we can match a certain amount, and it's not just like we're not planning, and we can have $150,000 saved up, then we don't have to borrow so much. And because, when the fire department comes in and they say, hey, we want a brand new tanker, I say, let's get a used tanker, because I want our new trucks to be our city trucks, not our country trucks. So our best trucks should be our city trucks, in my opinion, as a former firefighter exempt. And the fire department's done a very good job of buying equipment to get us by. And that's the rationale here. I would love to put more money towards that, and that's up to you all. But I didn't mean to interrupt you, Sandy.
That's right. The only other thing I was gonna say, the police car accrual fund, what you saw there is 17,000. At the end of December, it's at 32. We were able to pull down our 30,000 match from the USDA grant. sold the police car, that is not in there yet.
And I know it's getting late, but I have one last question. Can a really quick explanation about where the housing grants go and the housing fund.
So we have a housing grant program that if you are a homeowner who lives in your house, so you can't do it on rental property, can't do it if you are a renter, you can't do it if you don't live there. We have a program where if you, there's a list of appropriate things that you can improve, that you can apply for a grant. And it's, I believe it's a third up to $2,000. So if you spent $6,000, you could get $2,000 from the city.
Okay.
You know, it has to be something attached to your house. If you have an unattached garage, no go.
Primarily safety items,
A
to
lot-
make your home
A
safe.
lot, yep, a lot of them are safety type items. We just recently added, like if you have light service lines, we just added that as being an acceptable item. Yeah,
Is this
otherwise,
based on income in any way?
no.
And then you have to have residency in that house for X amount of years.
I want to say 3,
I can't recall.
5,
It's 3 to 5.
something like that,
So you can't just fix up a house, flip it, and then
Yeah.
you're on the hook for it.
right? So that's the housing grant.
Have you seen any applications for that grant?
Very few. I would say we get,
That's why we have about enough for 2 grants in there.
Yeah, the housing, $3,500?
Yeah. So we basically, it flows back into the housing fund, which we use for general housing related things. Like if we have to demolish a house, that comes out of there, or inspections and things like that for community develop, like housing development stuff. If we were able to build that up, we might be able to have it be a matching fund for some kind of a larger development.
And we would have to demolish a house because it's condemned and.
Some of the houses so before this group, the city did 2 houses a year. Because you can burn 2 houses a year. The fire department can burn under the DNR without having to go through a bunch of hoops. So they've done 2 a year. In the last 4 years, we've placarded and inspected 28 properties that were derelict buildings or really needed some attention, and say this, one of them was the Oaks apartment complex out there that got renovated. So if someone has a neglected house and they haven't lived in it for a certain amount of time, we have it inspected. Or, if it's an attractive nuisance, it doesn't have a roof, we have it inspected, and then it goes through the processes. And then there are options for people. They can fix their house up, they can sell their house, they can, we've had someone that didn't even know they had a house. They gifted it to the city and we gave them a tax credit for a useless house. And that's where the high school house is being built right now.
Well, what is the penalty if they don't
If they don't,
comply?
there are things we can do. Yeah.
Gauge gets on them.
Gauge.
Right. I knew you were here for something.
There's a couple
Process
different
called
options.
657A.
Yep, we can either take them through the nuisance abatement process, which is we take them to court saying you have to clean up the property.
Mhm.
You have to meet these conditions or else the city will do it and assess the cost to you. Or for more house residences that are kind of gone and not really able to be rehabbed, or we can't locate the owner or the owner is deceased, we can actually do what's called a 657 action, and the city will then acquire title to that property.
Who identifies the homes?
So far, it has been a mixture.
Yeah, even Steve drove around and
The
looked at,
police chief Anybody that is,
Citizens,
yeah, they're mostly complaint driven.
Okay.
It's in,
neighbors of these properties.
yeah, and if a house is abandoned,
Renters of these properties.
yeah. So not all of them, there's a lot of success stories that they're all success stories, but there are some that were just, sometimes the cheapest house to build, ones that already built. And sometimes that's not the case. So some of them have been rebuilt and people moved into them after they were sitting empty for years, or and so that provides various price points for housing. You could have a very economical house all the way up to the apartment complex was $1.5 million renovation for the apartment complex. So
You've made some progress.
I think that we have. I think we can be proud of where we're at. I think we probably have about 50 to 60 more problems, but we don't want to go kick anybody out of their house. We just need the houses to be fixed up and livable and safe, especially if they're rental houses. So
Can't really kick them out because, for Gage to be able to actively do much, they need to really be vacant about
It has
6 months.
They have to be abandoned buildings.
Yeah.
Does this have anything to do with sidewalks at all?
that could fall under nuisance things, but we have a lot of different nuisance policies. That wouldn't really lead.
Money would come from.
Yeah, this is mostly for direct activities directly surrounding housing in town. And that's why the housing grant comes out of there. It's because they can play well together. So if 10 people decided they wanted to fix up their house and get grants, we could consider it. Or if we had, someone pass away and they have no heirs and they don't leave an estate or whatever, and it just ends up being this house that nothing can be done with and it's not savable, then we may have to go and demolish it. One house that we had to do was an old church. It cost us $50,000 to tear down, something like that. And it was just a nightmare, very small. But now that we have equipment, we can do most of this work ourselves. So we go from paying $8, $10, $12, $15, $20, $30,000 to remove a property to just now we have the equipment, fuel, labor, and tipping fees and hauling. That's how much it costs us. It's a very lean operation, so we can do a lot more with the money because we use force account labor, meaning our own people, whenever possible.
Yeah, I know we can say that people need to pay attention, but it's exciting to me to think that we might be in a position now where we can make people aware of what Belle Plaine is doing. Like we talked about, on a Facebook page and, they just want to know straight, plain and simple. And we could say, look, we cleaned up X amount of houses this year, or whatever.
The only other thing about that housing fund number that's showing 40,000 there, when we originally committed to bringing the herring down, we were taking funds from, here and here and here and here to get it paid for. 15 grand of that came out of that housing fund. So that number is more like 27 now.
And we're in the process of
Yeah.
tearing down a house
40.
on 9th Avenue, so it'll be a little bit less than that probably, but not, that house was small and
Probably
yeah, yeah.
So,
Thank you for taking the time to explain a lot. I know you guys understand more than I do, so I appreciate your patience.
We're not going to 10:30 every meeting though.
It's not uncommon for a new council to go to a 10, 11 o'clock meeting in a budget
I'm just teasing.
work session.
I'm tired, man. I'll probably be in bed 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. You guys will all be working.
So you don't want me to call you when I'm on the road?
Yeah, exactly. I was just gonna say,
Oh,
my dog wakes me at 5:30. I'll be saying, Charmaine.
are you lucky? Questions, concerns, directions?
Thanks for all your work.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you very
it's
much.
awesome.
Very good,
Awesome
Sandy.
explanation, Steve and Lyle and Sandy.
We'll get through it.
few more, and that's what budgeting is about.
Mhm, well, kinda, sorta. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And there'll be one of those.
Well, if there's no questions for anybody, I need an adjournment. Do I have a
I'll make a motion to adjourn. I'm
I'll
on it.
second.
I'm on it tonight, chief.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Adjourned at 10:47 PM.
Your ribs